Welcome to The Explainer. Let's jump right in, because today we're talking about how the fundamental rules of the job market and honestly, your entire career trajectory have completely changed. Look, if you're planning your future based on the advice of past generations, you might be preparing for a world that literally no longer exists. I want to shatter the illusion right away. Get this. It's estimated that just 1.5% of today's new workers will experience what your grandparents had. You know, that classic single job for life. Instead, over a typical 50-year career, the average worker is now projected to hold around 9 different jobs, and that often includes at least one complete career change. The old playbook is entirely out the window. So, since we're looking at around 9 different jobs over a lifetime, we're going to use this roadmap to navigate this complex new ecosystem. We'll quickly cover 1. The end of the ladder, 2. Breaking employer boundaries, 3. The protean professional, 4. The contested terrain, and finally, 5. Your future career path. Okay, Section 1. The end of the ladder and why the job for life is completely obsolete. Think about the traditional, bounded career. It's built on this upward, linear climb that's defined entirely by seniority, right? You start at step 1 as an entry-level associate, and you literally just wait your turn to become a manager and then eventually, maybe, a senior leader. In this old model, your career is managed entirely by the organization. They dictate your training, your promotions, your status, the whole shebang. But as that tiny 1.5% statistic showed us, relying on this steady, long-term rise up a single corporate hierarchy, it's rapidly becoming a thing of the past.
And because we know that ladder is breaking, we arrived at Section 2, breaking employer boundaries and moving beyond the single organization.
Enter the boundaryless career. This is a concept first defined by Michael Arthur back in 1994, and it is the exact opposite of the traditional corporate ladder. It relies on both physical mobility, so actually moving geographically or across different organizations and even completely different industries, and psychological mobility, meaning you're breaking away from those traditional expectations in your own mind. In this model, you don't just look up to your boss to validate your worth. Your marketability is actually sustained by your outside networks and your broader industry insights. Notice how this modern path shifts from rigid steps into a really fluid journey. You aren't just climbing anymore, you're expanding. This way of thinking prioritizes skills expansion, career hopping, and project variety over strict hierarchy. You might move up, sure, but you might also move down or sideways. The goal isn't just snagging a higher title, it's about building a versatile skill set for life in a really fast-paced, high-velocity labor market.
Now, if the boundaryless career changes where we work, our next framework completely changes how we measure success. Section 3, the protean professional, or becoming the master of your own path.
In the protean model, which was developed by Hall in 1976, you are firmly in the driver's seat. And fun fact, the term actually comes from the Greek god Proteus, who could change his shape at will. So the crucial point here is that your success isn't determined by external promotions or some company's specific definition of achievement. Instead, it's driven by your own self-awareness, your adaptability, and your pursuit of truly meaningful, purpose-driven work. You are the one responsible for your continuous, lifelong learning.
Let's actually look at this protean path in action, using human resources as an example. Instead of just grinding away from HR assistant to HR manager to HR director, your personal values take priority. A protean professional might pivot from recruiting, bounce over to learning and development, move sideways into a well-being coach role, and then maybe pivot into organizational development. It's totally nonlinear. It embraces continuous reinvention instead of that simple, boring upward climb.
Building on this highly self-directed approach, we have what's called the kaleidoscope career model. Think of a literal kaleidoscope. As you turn it, the glass chips fall into beautiful, entirely new arrangements. Well, this model suggests we are constantly shifting the priorities of our lives to find the perfect equilibrium. We evaluate our careers based on 3 core chips: authenticity, which is being our true selves; balance, which means managing work and non-work demands like family; and challenge, our fundamental need for stimulating work and autonomy.
Now, when we combine mobility with self-direction, we get some pretty fascinating employee archetypes. If you have high physical mobility but low self-direction, you become a wanderer, always moving but without a really clear personal anchor. If you have low mobility but high self-direction, you're a fortress, finding stable opportunities in predictable organizations that perfectly match your strong internal values. But if you possess high levels of both mobility and self-direction, you become a protean career architect, capable of leveraging your skills across any boundary to make a massive impact.
So what exactly happens when these highly mobile individuals collide with a traditional organization? Well, we enter Section 4, the contested terrain, and the friction between you and your boss. This brings us to a really brilliant concept called the contested terrain. Think of this as the psychological contract, the unspoken, constant negotiation happening between your personal objectives and the objectives of your employer. Because your goals and the organization's goals are no longer perfectly aligned like they used to be on the traditional career ladder, this middle area becomes a terrain of continuous contestation and, honestly, compromise.
Here is exactly why that friction exists. You are investing your personal career capital. That means your motivation, your knowing why, your skills, your knowing how, and your networks, your knowing whom. You obviously want a return on that investment to grow your personal marketability. But the organization, they want to extract that exact value to build their own knowledge capital, their corporate culture, their internal capabilities, and their institutional connections to gain a competitive advantage. You want to stay mobile, they want to retain your expertise. It's a classic tug of war.
To resolve this tension, a lot of companies are adopting what's called the new organizational career. It's a brilliant synthesis, honestly. Instead of purely linear or purely transitory progression, you get spiral progression. Instead of a job for life or constant job hopping, you see medium-term tenure across different roles, guided by both the objective corporate goals and the subjective personal values of the employee. It's a real middle ground.
Let's move to our final section, Section 5, Your Future Career Path, and how we translate this theory into actual roles.
Because modern work is so incredibly complex, organizations desperately need experts to handle these exact dynamics, and this has opened up some amazing nonlinear opportunities. You aren't just stuck doing admin anymore. You can literally design structural futures as an OD consultant, use advanced statistics and people analytics, or champion the human element as an employee experience and well-being advisor. The options are wide open.
So, we've seen that the traditional ladder is permanently broken. The true power of career capital now sits squarely in your hands. You have the absolute freedom to be a protein career architect, arranging the kaleidoscope of your life to fit your own unique values. So the most exciting question left to answer is, which path will you design? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and go take control of your journey.